Hello and welcome to the Selective High School Placement Test 2023 Reading Question Paper Sample Answer Guide. So in this video, we're going to go through the 2023 sample reading paper and go through the questions to see why the correct answer is the correct answer and how to best find the correct answer. In the actual selective test, for the reading portion of the test, you will have 40 minutes to answer 30 multiple choice questions. As this is the sample test, we don't actually have 30 questions in this paper, but just be prepared to answer 30 multiple choice questions in 40 minutes in the actual test. So let's start. The first text is The Curtain, a poem by Judith Wright. So in the test, it's really important that you read through the entire text before you go on to answer the questions. For the purposes of this video, however, because this is a question and answer guide, we're going to go straight to the questions to show you how to best answer the questions. But it's really important in the test that you read through the text first. So question 9 asks us, in the first verse, what effect does the curtain have on the narrator? So the question, we're going to highlight or underline keywords. For example, the first verse, that tells us where to look. Question 9 is telling us to look in the first verse for our answer. What effect does the curtain, so the curtain has some sort of effect on the poem's narrator. Before we go back to the text, we're going to look at the list of potential answers as well, just so that we have an idea of what we're looking for. So the answer could be A, it lifts the narrator's dwindling spirits. B, it urges the narrator to rouse the sleeper. C, it inspires the narrator to go on a journey. Or D, it prompts the narrator to recall something. So let's go to the first verse. And this is the first verse here. It was the narrator softly rising and it was the curtain softly rising and falling, reminded me you were home. So, matching keywords, the curtain. And what does the curtain do? It was the curtain softly rising and falling, reminded me. So the curtain reminds the narrator, who is the subject, me, in the poem. And when we look at the list of potential answers, we see that this best matches D, because D talks about how the curtain prompts the narrator to recall or to be reminded of something. Now, question 10. When the narrator describes the sleeper in the first verse, we get the impression that, so once again, we're told where to look. When the narrator describes the sleeper in the first verse, and we know what we're looking for, we're looking at the description of the sleeper for an impression. And the impression is either going to be A, the narrator is upset with the sleeper for being a burden. B, the sleeper's face is familiar and dear to the narrator. C, the sleeper is peaceful but troubled by their dreams. Or D, the narrator's feelings about the sleeper are complicated. So let's go back to the first verse and read it again. It was the curtain softly rising and falling, reminded me you were home, who had been so long away. And when I went to wake you, I stood in silence watching, your mouth softened in sleep, the lids where your eyes lay. So the description of the sleeper, all the descriptors seem to be soft, right? All the descriptors in this verse are soft, peaceful. For example, silence, the word silence, softly, softened. They all give this impression of tranquility, of relaxation. The narrator doesn't seem to be looking at the sleeper with negative feelings. They're there to peacefully wake the sleeper up, and they're looking at them fondly. They're remembering something to do with the home, right? So when we go back to the potential answers, it doesn't seem like the narrator is upset. It doesn't look like the sleeper's dreams are troubled. It doesn't look like there's any complicated feelings because there's no mix of negative and positive emotions. The narrator seems to look at the sleeper endearingly. So the sleeper's face is familiar and dear to the narrator. Question 11, in the second verse, so we're told to look at the second verse, what observation, and we're looking for an observation, does the narrator make? A, the sleeper has not changed very much as they've grown. B, both the sleeper and the narrator have forgotten so much. C, in dreams, the sleeper will always remember their youth. Or D, in the future, the sleeper and the narrator will meet again. So let's look at the second verse. And this is the second verse here that we're looking at now. So grown you looked. So you, You is the sleeper in this poem, and the sleeper looks grown. That suggests that they've changed, right? That they've grown up. They were possibly a child once, or the narrator remembers them as a child, and now they're grown. So grown, you looked in the same unaltered room. The room is unaltered. So the room is unchanged, but the sleeper is not. The sleeper has grown, the room has not changed in any way. So much of your childhood you were already forgetting. The sleeper is forgetting their childhood while I remembered. So the narrator still remembers the sleeper's childhood, whereas the sleeper is forgetting. Yet in the unforgetting dream. But the dream, the sleeper's dreams are unforgetting. You will come here all your life for renewal and meeting. So it seems like when the sleeper dreams, they will remember, they will come back to this room. So here, the location is this unaltered room. So the fact that the room is unaltered suggests that the room is symbolic of the sleeper's childhood. So when they're dreaming, when they're sleeping, they come back all their life to this place of remembrance of their childhood for meeting and renewal with the narrator. So it's really important that you deconstruct the text like this because it really helps you find the meaning. When we look at question 11, the answers, the sleeper has not changed very much as they've grown. That doesn't seem to be true. The room has not changed, but the sleeper has, is what the second verse tells us. But the sleeper and the narrator have forgotten so much. That's not true because the narrator remembers while the sleeper has forgotten. C, in dreams, the sleeper will always remember their youth. The answer is C, because the sleeper's dreams are unforgetting. So it's to do with remembrance. Their dreams have to do with remembrance. You might think that D, in the future, the sleeper and the narrator will meet again because of this last line. You will come here all your life for renewal and meeting, but it's really important that you remember that reading papers are about the most correct answer. D, while the second verse does talk about meeting, that's not the main idea of it. C best captures the main ideas of the second verse. Now we move on to question 12. Why are the sleeper's eyelids compared to buds in line 10? So once again, we're told where to look. Line 10. And what we're looking at is the comparison of eyelids to buds. And the answer is A, to show that they are closed, B, to imply immaturity, C, to give the idea of new life, D, to describe their color and texture. So let's look at line 10. So this is line 9, that means this is line 10. And I know that the question tells us to look at line 10, but it's really important that we read the line before and after line 10 to get a better idea of the context of line 10. It was your breath, so softly rising and falling, that kept me silent, with your lids like buds. So here we get the comparison of the lids to buds, and the descriptor given to this comparison is unbroken. So that they're saying that the sleeper's buds are unbroken, their eyelids are unbroken. What does unbroken mean? It means unchanged, unopened, right? So that possibly means that the lids are not open, they are closed, which best matches A, to show that the eyelids are closed. 13, what is the curtain that is referred to in the final verse? So we're looking at the curtain and we're looking for it in the final verse. The answer is going to be A, the wall of the bedroom, or B, the shadows around the bed, or C, the breaths taken by the sleeper, or D, the inside of the sleeper's eyelids. So let's go to the final verse. It was your breath, so softly rising and falling, that kept me silent. With your lids like buds unbroken, you watched on their curtain. So there we go, we've found curtain. And the curtain is on something, on there. What is the subject here? On their curtain, or the possession of their? It's the buds. So the curtain belongs to the buds because it's on the buds, the curtain of your life. You see the curtain of your life on your buds. And here we see that the buds are the lids, right? So really the possession is to lids. So on your eyelids, you see the curtain of your life. And what does that best match? That matches D. The inside of the sleeper's eyelids is the curtain. While dreaming, the sleeper sees their dreams on the insides of their eyelids. 14, what is the most likely relationship between the poem's narrator and the sleeper? So it's for questions like this that don't point us to a specific verse or line, that it's really important that you have read the entire poem or the entire text before you came to the questions, because then you'd already have a good idea of what the text is talking about. So is it A, romantic partners, B, a parent and their adult child, C, childhood best friends, or D, a grandparent and their small grandchild? Having read what we have read, or gathering from what we've already read, we know that it's not going to be D, because as we saw in verse 2, the narrator talks about how the sleeper has grown. They're not small anymore. So this doesn't make sense. It can't be D. It's unlikely to be C as well, because we see that the narrator seems to be watching over the sleeper peacefully. They're looking after them. They're taking care of them. This suggests a more parental relationship. So B is the option that best matches what we found, that the relationship between the sleeper and the narrator is of a parent and their adult child, because we see that the parent or the narrator is reminiscing on the sleeper's childhood. They're thinking about the sleeper's childhood and thinking about how the sleeper can always come back home to remember and meet the narrator in their childhood bedroom, right? So for 14, B is the option that best makes sense. Okay, so that's the end of the first set of the questions. Now we go on to the second set of questions, which are extract questions. So we have to read the 4 extracts below on the theme of communication. So they're all about communication. For questions 21 to 30, choose an option. Extract A, B, C, or D, which you think best answers the question. So the questions, for example, are like, which writer analyzes what good communication is? And you'd have to answer the writer of extract A, B, C, or D. So you just put extract A if you think it's A, so you just put A here, or you'd put B if you think it's the writer of extract B, and so on and so forth. So let's read through the extracts together, because there's no way of just looking at the questions and then going back to the text without having read them. So like I've said before, it's really important that you read the text first before you answer the questions, but this is even more so with extract questions. With extract questions, you cannot not read the text. You must read the text before answering the questions. Okay, and as we go through the extracts, we're going to underline and highlight keywords and phrases. Extract A. Aboriginal message sticks are a custom that dates back over 60,000 years. So extract A seems to be about Aboriginal message sticks. They were a means of communicating between different Aboriginal nations and were transported by a messenger traveling on foot. The sticks were often announcements about ceremony. The sticks were often announcements about ceremonies, such as initiations or funerals, which were known as sorry business in Aboriginal communities. They could also be for establishing political partnerships, requesting emergency assistance, organizing hunting, or trading vital resources. Many of the signs on the stick had fixed meanings, while others were intended to be decorative. Colors such as red ochre or white pipe clay also added meaning, so colors added meaning, and even the type of timber had significance. Messengers were often men, but in some regions, women were known to take on the role. Messengers would set out on foot, sometimes journeying for days or weeks on end. The mission was dangerous. There were over 500 language groups within Australia, and crossing into foreign lands without permission could be a punishable offence. But envoys had diplomatic immunity, and their message stick was like a passport in the modern sense. In order to show peaceful intentions, they displayed the message stick clearly from a safe distance. A common technique was to hang it from the tip of a spear or to tuck it into a headband. So by underlining keywords and ideas, we've made sure that we've sort of made it much easier to go back and find the main ideas of the text. And what I'm going to do, and what I suggest you do in the test, is after having read through an extract, write its main idea or the main takeaways from it next to it, so that you have a quick way of coming back and seeing, oh, this was what this was about. I remember now. So this one is about Aboriginal message sticks. Extract B. Researchers, so already we know this has something to do with scientific investigation probably, have observed an interesting collaboration between the coral grouper and other predatory marine species. So this is about sea animals. Groupers will try and grab a bite on their own, but sometimes their prey will dive into the cracks of the coral reef where the groupers can't reach them. So they will wait around for another fish to come along, specifically either a Napoleon wrasse or a moray eel, and ask for help hunting down dinner. Basically, the grouper will point its nose at the hidden fish and shake from side to side, signaling the presence of the prey. Then either the wrasse will smash into the reef or get to the prey, or the eel will creep into the gaps and try to grab it. Sometimes the wrasse or the eel catch the prey and get a meal for themselves. That's just bad luck for the grouper. So sometimes the wrasse or the eel catch the prey and get a meal for themselves, but other times the prey tries to escape by fleeing the reef, giving the grouper another shot at nabbing its dinner. So what's extract B about? About coral groupers getting prey through Napoleon wrasse and moray eels. Extract C. When you communicate, so you communicate, this is probably to do with humans, not sea animals this time. When you communicate, as well as being able to clearly convey a message, you need to also listen. So communication also has to do with listening in a way that gains the full meaning of what's being said and makes the other person feel heard and understood. Effective communication. So there we go. That's what this extract is about. Sounds like it should be instinctive, but all too often when we try to communicate with others, something goes astray. We say one thing, the other person hears something else, and misunderstandings and frustrations ensue. This can cause problems in your home, school, and with friendships. When communicating with others, we often focus on what we should say. However, effective communication is less about talking and more about listening. Oh, I'm so sorry about how wonky the line is. All right, so let's try again. Effective communication is less about talking and more about listening. Ooh. Listening well means not just understanding the words or the information being communicated, but also understanding the emotions the speaker is trying to convey. There's a big difference between engaged listening. So big difference between engaged listening and simply hearing. When you really listen, when you're engaged with what's being said, you'll hear the subtle intonations in someone's voice that tell you how that person is feeling and the emotions they're trying to communicate. So extract C is about effective communication. Effective communication by listening and paying attention to the emotions being conveyed. And what I'm writing down, these key ideas, they're nothing new. They're just the words that I've gotten together from the key ideas and main concepts that I've underlined. So just remember the answer is always on the paper in front of you in reading tests. You don't really have to come up with anything too new. You just have to look carefully and pay attention to what you're reading. So let's go back to the questions. Question 21 asks us, which writer analyzes what good communication is? And we know that this is going to be extract C, because extract C talks about effective communication. Good communication is just effective communication. So it's extract C. And looking back, we missed extract D. So sorry about that. We'll just go back and look through extract D now. So extract D. Trees may look like solitary individuals, but the ground beneath our feet tells a different story. So extract D is about trees, communication between trees. Trees are secretly talking, trading, and waging war on one another. They do this by using a network of fungi that grow around and inside their roots. The fungi provide the trees with nutrients such as phosphates and nitrates, and in return, they receive sugars. So they provide the trees with nutrients and they receive sugars. But scientists have found this connection runs far deeper than first thought. By plugging into the fungal network, trees can share resources with each other. This system has been nicknamed the Wood Wide Web. Plants also use fungi to send messages to one another. If they are attacked, they can release chemicals through their roots, which can warn their neighbors to raise their defenses. But like our internet, the Wood Wide Web has its dark side too. Some orchids hack the system, so orchids are hackers, to steal resources from nearby trees, and other species, like the black walnut, spread toxic chemicals through the network to sabotage their rivals. Arboreal cybercrime aside, scientists are still debating why plants seem to behave in such an altruistic way. So, what's Extract D about? It is about the Wood Wide Web, or how trees talk through fungi. How trees and plants talk through fungi. Right, okay, now we can go back to the questions. So question 22. Which writer explains that those communicating have a special privilege? Having read the text, I know that this is about the text about Aboriginal message sticks, because when we look at Extract A, which is about Aboriginal message sticks, we see that those who carried Aboriginal message sticks had diplomatic immunity. So they were given a privilege that no one else was with their means of communication, which was the Aboriginal message sticks. They were given diplomatic immunity, so that means they were safe even when they were traveling on a dangerous mission, traveling across different territories. So having highlighted or underlined and taken notes on the main ideas of Extract A, we very quickly find that the answer to question 22 is A. So now we look at question 23, which asks us, which writer describes communication using part of the body? And when we think back to the extracts and what we've underlined, we know that this is the one about the fish, because Extract B is the only one that talks about its subjects moving its body parts to communicate specific messages. For example, the grouper will point its nose and shake from side to side to signal the presence of prey or to communicate this presence of prey. And that's why the answer to question 23 is B. Now, question 24. Which writer mentions a form of communication that is used to signal danger? So when we look at the extracts, mentions a form of communication that is used to signal danger. When we think back to the extracts, we know that this is the one about the trees because we underlined here that plants also use fungi to send messages to one another. If they are attacked, they can release chemicals through their roots, which can warn the neighbors to raise their defenses. And that's why the answer is Extract D. Which writer explains that a message may be communicated successfully, but outcomes vary? So it may be communicated successfully, but outcomes vary. You might think that it's Extract C because it talks about effective communication and how there can be different types, but it's actually not because Extract C doesn't have varying outcomes. It talks about varying methods of communication. Instead, the answer is Extract B, because Extract B talks about how you can communicate successfully. The grouper can communicate successfully by pointing its nose and shaking from side to side to signal prey, but it might not get its dinner because the eel or the wrasse might steal the prey for itself. And that's why the answer is extract B. Now, question 26. Which writer describes one type of organism carrying information to a different organism? We already know that's going to be extract D, because extract D describes fungi, which is one type of organism, carrying messages from one tree to another or from one plant to another. Which extract explains that when communication is unsuccessful, it can lead to conflict? When we think back to the extracts, we can see here, we say one thing, the other person hears something, and misunderstandings and frustrations ensue. This can cause problems in your home, school, and with friendships. And that's why the answer is extract C. Which writer describes a form of communication that aims to cause damage? So when we think back to this, the answer is going to be extract D, because extract D is the only one that talks about intentionally using communication to harm someone or something else. For example, orchids hack the system to steal resources from nearby trees, or the black walnut spreads toxic chemicals through the network, through the communication network. And that's why the answer is extract D. Which writer describes a form of communication that is deliberately made visible? So if we look at extract A, it shows here, in order to show peaceful intentions, they displayed the message stick clearly from a safe distance. So clearly, visibly. A common technique was to hang it from the tip of the spear or to tuck it into a headband. And the answer is extract A. And our final question, which writer mentions that one form of communication is more sophisticated than was previously believed? We know that this is extract D because we read here that, but scientists have found this connection runs far deeper than first thought. So our initial findings on the Wood Wide Web didn't reflect how complicated they actually are. So the answer is D. That's the end of this video. I wish you the best of luck with your preparation for the selective test. Always remember that with reading papers, it's really important that you read through the text and deconstruct what you're reading. And yeah, the answer is always on the paper in front of you, so make sure to look carefully. Good luck, and I'll see you next time.